All right, well, good evening and welcome to the Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Thank you for joining us tonight. I call this meeting to order. Our board clerk, Julie Mitchell, will take roll call this evening.
Thank you, Chair. This evening, Ken George and Chris Johnson are absent. I will call the following board members as present this evening: Sal Camarada, Oshana Etten, Mike Roselli, Jeff Moncrief, Sean McAndrew, Andy Coe, Diane Mayo, and Reuben Moore.
Thank you. The Cary Community Plan will continue to be the guiding document for this board. Our role is to function as citizen advisors to the council who will ultimately make decisions on all rezoning activity. We recognize that not all rezoning requests are supported unanimously by members of our community, but we strive to balance the impact of increased building density required to support Cary's growth while maintaining the historic charm and character of Cary. The Cary Community Plan was initially adopted in 2017 following a collaborative effort between Cary's citizens and our town government. That collaboration has continued and resulted in a recently updated version of the plan adopted by Council in January of 2025. The chapters of the plan include live, work, shop, engage, shape, move, enrich, serve, and act. The community plan can be found on Cary's website. Your citizen opinions based on the Cary Community Plan document play a very important role in advising our leaders. We encourage our citizens to refer to the plan and provide feedback that's based on the guiding principles of the plan as it relates to the zoning request. While this is a public meeting, it is not a public hearing. There's no opportunity for the public to speak during this meeting. If you have comments about any of these items, we encourage you to reach out to staff by email or phone. You may also reach out to board members through email. You may also contact council directly through email during the public speaks out portion of any regularly scheduled council meetings. These meetings may be streamed live on Cary's website and will be posted to YouTube. All past Planning and Zoning Board meetings are available to view on YouTube. At this time, we would need to adopt the agenda, so I'd ask if someone would make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. And then we also need to have a motion to approve the meetings from our January 27th meeting. The minutes from our January 27th meeting. Would anyone like to make that motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any second? All right. Well, so moving into our first case tonight, we have 24 REZ 05 Westley Manor. Rachel Smith will be our principal planner that will share the staff's presentation. Following the presentation, the applicant will share their remarks. All board members will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff and the applicant. Ms. Smith, you may proceed.
Good evening, Board.
Before I begin, I want to announce that the Imagine Cary Community Plan update, reviewed by the board last year, was approved by the council last month. We've revised the policy analysis included in staff reports to be reflective of the updated plan. There have been revisions and updates to plan policies and chapters. Most notably, environmental policies shifted from the Serve chapter to the new Enrich chapter. Your first case this evening is a request to rezone approximately 0.7 acres located at the intersection of High House Road and Bay Oak Drive. I would like to note that generally, most of the rezoning requests that come before you, if approved, would increase the development intensity of the site. Thus, there would typically be the submittal of a development plan following the rezoning. This case is unique in that an exempt subdivision would be possible should the rezoning be approved, which would not be subject to Cary's development requirements. I will provide more information on subdivision exemptions later in the presentation. The subject site is a vacant, wooded lot located on the north side of High House Road, between Northwest Maynard Road and Old Apex Road. There are nearby residential uses located to the north and south, and office and institutional uses along High House to the east and west. Cary's GIS indicates the presence of a potential stream buffer impacting a large portion of the subject site. However, the applicant has obtained a letter from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality noting the stream is not subject to buffers. High House Road is a designated 4-lane median divided thoroughfare on Cary's future roadway widths map. It has a sidewalk on the south side and street side trail on the north. Bay Oak Drive is a 2-lane local street that is built out to its ultimate cross-section. Go Cary routes 4 and 8 operate along this section of High House Road, with a bus stop within approximately 130 feet of the subject site. The Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Resources Master Plan proposes a 10-foot wide street side trail along the property frontage. Now, having gone over the site characteristics, I want to take a moment to explain how the subdivision exemption could apply to this site. NC General Statutes exempt certain divisions of land from subdivision requirements if they meet parameters related to size and number of lots created. Due to this site's small size and number of lots possible, it would likely develop under this exemption. The reason this is important is that the typical site development standards of the LDO would not be required. This includes buffers and streetscapes, right-of-way dedication, and road and pedestrian improvements. However, dimensional standards of the LDO, such as minimum lot sizes, setbacks, and height, would still apply. In this case, only those development standards offered via zoning conditions would apply if the rezoning is approved and the site develops under this exempt provision. The site is currently zoned office and institutional conditional use per rezoning approved in 1995. That rezoning limited the use of the site to office, personal service establishment, club or lodge, religious assembly, daycare, nursing home, and a number of civic and educational uses. If developed under the current zoning, the subdivision exemption would not apply. The applicant proposes to rezone the site to residential 12 conditional use. The applicant's conditions include limiting the use to detached dwellings. The size of the site would allow for a maximum of 2 lots. Restricting direct lot access to High House Road. This will require driveways to be located on Bay Oak Drive. Installation of a high visibility crosswalk along Bay Oak Drive. We note that since the time this condition was initially offered, it appears NCDOT has striped a crosswalk at this location. Providing a 20-foot wide landscaped area along the western property line, which may be located on the residential lots. For comparison, the LDO requirement would be a 40-foot Type A buffer. Providing a 50-foot landscaped area planted to a Type A standard along High House Road. This would also be located on a residential lot. This would meet the required width and planting standard of the LDO, but would not be in a common area. Dedication of a 20-foot wide greenway easement along the site frontage for future street side trail construction by Cary, and providing a bedroom on the ground floor of each dwelling at the time of initial construction. This slide illustrates the impact of the rezoning in terms of buffers and dedications, noting that the rezoning action changes the zoning and use of the site and also creates a potential exempt subdivision. The left side is the proposed rezoning scenario, and the right side presents a development scenario under the existing zoning. First, it should be noted that this property indicate a 30-foot sewer easement along the northern property boundary. This easement remains under both scenarios. Now, looking at the rezoning scenario on the left, we can illustrate the applicant's proposed conditions. This includes a 50-foot wide landscaped area along High House Road and 20 feet along the western property line, where the site is adjacent to an office and institutional parcel. The applicant has also offered a 20-foot easement along the site frontage for the future street side trail. For comparison, we will now shift to the right to illustrate the existing zoning and the standard LDO requirements. This includes an additional right-of-way dedication along High House Road, estimated to be about 5 feet of additional width. A 30-foot streetscape is required for non-residential uses, and this would be on non-residential uses on thoroughfares, which would be applied to the new right-of-way line. A 20-foot Type B buffer to the west would be required, in addition to a 40-foot Type A buffer to the north and a 15-foot streetscape along Bay Oak Drive. Finally, construction of a 10-foot street side trail, as well as 5 feet of sidewalk on Bay Oak Drive, would be required under the O&I CU zoning. The final side-by-side comparison shows the building envelope under each scenario. A preliminary analysis against the Imagine Cary community plan found that policies in the Live, Shape, Engage, Move, and Enrich chapters apply. Regarding the Live chapter, the rezoning could be supported by the policy regarding residential infill, given the small size of the site and the fact that it is bordered by existing office and institutional and residential uses. Regarding Shape, the proposed residential lots could make a reasonable use transition between office and institutional zoning and nearby detached residential development. However, the buffer transition to adjacent office and institutional uses is less than the LDO would otherwise require. Similarly, reduced buffers are not clearly supported by this policy, which notes the importance of high quality and visually appealing development. In addition, the buffers also relate to the Enrich policy regarding preservation and replacement of tree canopy. In this case, future trees would be preserved or planted on the site that would otherwise be required by the LDO. The proposed rezoning may partially address Engage policies by providing a 20-foot easement for the street side trail. If the site were not anticipated to be developed as an exempt subdivision, construction of the trail would be required, and the easement width would be determined at the time of development plan. Regarding Move, the proposal does not provide any right-of-way dedication along High House Road. The Future Growth Framework designates the site as being within a heritage neighborhood where a variety of housing types are supported. Detached dwellings are recognized as an appropriate use in these areas. A neighborhood meeting for this request was held in April, and 6 citizens participated. There were no questions or concerns raised. After that meeting, staff received 4 emails and 1 written letter expressing general support for the rezoning. A public hearing was held in September of last year. 4 speakers expressed support for the rezoning. Council members had questions and comments about the future street side trail and easement, questions about buffers, and overall general positive feedback about a small residential infill project. Since the public hearing, the applicant has increased the greenway width from 10 to 20 feet and has added a condition to provide bedrooms on the ground floor of the homes at the time of initial construction. Staff finds the small residential infill site is supported by some live and shape policies. Regarding the engaged chapter, the easement for street-side trail, which has been increased from 10 feet to 20, makes future construction of the trail more feasible. However, this commitment is less than what would be required for a non-exempt subdivision, which would construct this segment. Move policies are also not fully met since no right-of-way is offered. This concludes my presentation. The applicant's representative, Tamara Bowles, is here to provide comments, and then I'm available for your questions.
Great, thank you.
Gosh, I feel short now. Can you see me?
We can see you.
All right. Well, good evening, Town of Cary, Planning and Zoning Committees. My name is Tamara Bowles. I'm a local attorney and also Vice President of Evanstone's Enterprises, LLC. So on behalf of the business, I come before you as the applicant to implore you to approve the rezoning request for 24 REZ05 from O&I to R12 conditional. First, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today, and I stand before you really to advocate for this vital change in our community, a proposal to rezone a vacant lot from office and institutional to residential conditional. But seeing that February is Black History Month, I thought I'd also share a little bit of history. See, our family ties to Cary run very deep. So when my ancestor, Morris Evans, an indentured slave from England in 1654, came to America, I'm sure you could never imagine how extensive our footprint would be, specifically here in Cary. His descendants, Frank and Nancy Marsh, held the marriage ceremony of Charlie and Matilda Evans in 1877 in their home located on the very land that we discussed tonight to be rezoned in Dutchess Village. They went on to have 12 children, of which I am a direct descendant. They were both buried in the Turner Evans Cemetery, located just about 3 football fields from our Westley Manor site. Just yesterday, we met with representatives from the town of Cary and Historic Preservation Committee to consider even registering the cemetery as a historic landmark. Our family ties to the Dutchess Village area continue to this day, as I can walk around and see 14 streets that are literally named after my family. In Dutchess Village alone, there are 4. Tanisha, my older sister's name, Joel, my cousin, Vermel, a great-great-great-grandmother, and Puff, a nickname for my cousin Brittany. This is the area adjacent to the very area we discussed tonight. And tonight's applicant, George Bailey, has been committed to building up his communities here in Cary and abroad. With 2 years in the Peace Corps in Ethiopia and 5 years with the U.S. Agency of International Development, he spent his early years helping to rebuild communities in West and South Africa in countries like Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Lesotho. From the past to today, including 5 subdivisions built here in Cary, building up our communities hasn't always been a part of our family history. So tonight, we are here requesting rezoning of the lot located on High House Road. Since Evanstone Enterprises has owned this land since 1992, we've attempted to market this property with 3 different real estate firms. We proposed designs for an office building 6,000 square feet with no success. The current LDO severely restricts what we can do. We need this parcel rezoned. Based on the current zoning, there's only 12,000 square feet of usable land from the total 30,715. This land needs to be rezoned as it creates a tremendous hardship. We've proposed 1 or 2 homes with a second bedroom on the first floor for multi-generational families to be placed on this lot, and that everyone can agree we need more single-family homes that are a great need in this area. Not another commercial building, which increases the traffic to the surrounding neighborhoods. We've already agreed to a 20-foot easement to widen the town's access on High House Road. We've done our part to really make this happen, and now we need you to do yours. We've taken in consideration the voice of the community in this ask. For example, Khalil Camera, who lives at 104 Joel Court, my cousin, has shared, or he's not my cousin, but he lives on my cousin's street name, has shared his letter of support stating specifically, "I feel confident that the plans will add value to the neighborhood and it is a practical use of the land." Hazel Lee, who lives at 520 Bay Oak Drive, stated, "I approve the rezoning request of Evans Stones Enterprises." Dixie Lee Newsom, who lives at 500 Bay Oak Drive, stated, "I support this residential project and now feel comfortable that a new business with a myriad of traffic issues is not being built on this site so close to my home." Juan Yang, the business property owner at 232 High House Road, adjacent to this property, stated that he approved the location of the buffers and home as the applicant has proposed. "I am in opposition of an easement for the side street trail," Mr. Wong said. And lastly, David Camp, who lives at 111 Tanisha Court, my sister, for over 30 years, and he was a former Town of Cary zoning regulations and enforcement professional, has expressed his support for this application. He noted in his email and letter of support, one, he's had concerns for years about the viability of an office use because of the parcel size and drive locations at the intersection. The office building across from Bay Oak Drive generates plenty of extra traffic on an ordinary residential collector road, and another business would make it worse. He goes on to say, all other property along Bay Oak Drive is developed and lotted, and that's unlikely to change anytime soon. He believes there is a need for additional buffers to the north or south of the property because it is sloped area and heavily wooded. There is significant elevation change which will block direct visibility. And lastly, he believes the trail, a 10-inch sidewalk, will not be completed along High House Road in any of our lifetimes and would be a waste. Requiring a sidewalk on the west side of Bay Oak Drive would be a similar waste. And he would rather see 2 homes on the parcel than another vacant lot. As was already stated, there were over 200 individuals that were invited to attend the neighborhood meeting that we held on Wednesday, April 3rd, 2004 at 6:30 via Zoom. Comments from the Q&A section indicated support from someone such as Diana Allen, who wrote, I don't know how to unmute, but I support the applicant, with her thumbs up emoji. No community members in attendance expressed concerns with proceeding as proposed. I could go on why we want to do this, why the surrounding community wants us to do this, and why the town of Cary should approve the rezoning request for 24 REZ05 from O&I to R12 conditional, but I'd like to focus my remaining energies on answering any questions you may have. So I yield to the town of Cary.
Terrific. Thank you so much. Just to reiterate, the Cary Community Plan is in place to guide development in Cary. As we think about our questions, keep in mind how this proposed case fits or does not fit the community plan. When making a motion, it would be helpful to describe how you see your motion impacting the Cary Community Plan. For example, work, shape, or live chapters. While this is not a requirement, it would help the town council understand how we think about the case and how it applies to the plan. Do any of the board members have any questions at this time? Yeah, did you like to make another comment?
Yes, I have a question actually, Ms. Rachel. In the presentation, it was identified that the sidewalk in front of Bay Oak Drive was a LDO requirement. My previous application never indicated it was a LDO requirement. It was a requirement from staff to see if they, if I would donate the sidewalk, install the sidewalk on Bay Oak Drive. So is it an LDO requirement for the sidewalk on Bay Oak Drive?
Would you like me to answer?
Yeah, go ahead. I believe that was addressed yet.
Sure. So Bay Oak is a local street which requires a sidewalk on at least one side
And it
for the
already-
LDO.
Yeah, but it already has sidewalk on the
The
other
other
side.
side.
So that means it's not a requirement, and so the information is a little incorrect.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Reuben, you said you had a question. I'll let you start.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I don't know if the developer or our staff would know the answer to this question, but given a highway background, I'm curious about the proposed future section of 100-foot right-of-way on this road. And a lot of things in the plans are off in the very far distance. I want to make sure that this is not a project that might be in the current Transportation Improvement Program, which would mean it was programmed for future funding, or if it's just in the comprehensive plan, which could be like a 30-year vision.
So it is not planned at this time.
Okay. And I'm trying to understand all the talk about the right-of-way for the future Greenway path. I understand it's not planned, not funded at this time.
Correct.
So they're saying they will give, I heard talk of a 20-foot side path. I'm assuming that's just the right-of-way, not the paved width of the facility?
They're offering a 20-foot easement for the street side trail.
Okay. Is that beyond the existing right-of-way?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
I'll just go that. So Diane, did you have any additional questions?
Not yet, thank you.
Not yet? Okay. Andy?
I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sean?
With respect to the buffers, it says with the conditions that it's, on the residential lot. After it's built, what happens to the buffer requirements there?
Yeah, that's a good question. Our experience is that it's harder for those buffers to be maintained if they're on the residential lot rather than in a common lot situation.
All right, so while it will be built like this, there's nothing to say that they won't come into the buffers after everything is built and things are sold.
It is possible that some landscaping could be removed, yes. We find that to be a little bit more challenging.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, anything?
Is the 20-foot greenway easement sufficient for the town to build the easement, the greenway?
So there's quite a bit of topography there, and we don't have a good design at this point. So at the time of development plan, usually those design details are evaluated. Topography can make it more challenging, and sometimes you do need additional width to have access and to build within it. So I can't really answer that question. Certainly, the going from 10 feet to 20 feet is an improvement in our mind.
Anything else, Mike?
No, thank you.
No. Lashana?
Yes, I have a small question maybe, but are the driveways that you're envisioning for these houses off of Bay Oak Drive, correct? And are you thinking like two separate driveways for each, or one common that goes in and splits in the back of the houses? Just kind of wondering. I'm asking whoever can answer this question is, how are you envisioning the entrance for the two proposed buildings? Is it going to be two cuts into going in and out of Bay Oak Drive? The reason I'm asking is there's that little island in between, so I'm just kind of curious how that might work with.
So I'll answer from the staff perspective.
Yeah.
We tend to try to avoid shared driveways if at all possible due to conflicts and challenges.
Got it.
Now, are there times at time of plan review that a shared driveway could be the only option? Sure, but we would certainly encourage and prefer two separate driveways.
Okay, so that little island that's kind of sticking inside the Bay Oak Drive, is that a possibility that might be impacted and might have to be removed? I'm just kind of looking at.
We'll evaluate all
That's all
obstacles for
there.
egress and ingress.
Okay, that's it. Otherwise, no problem.
Sal, any questions?
No questions.
All right. This is probably for the staff. I found it, I've never seen a condition of a bedroom on a first floor and with some very specific language about at the time of construction.
Correct.
Just help me I know you mentioned the multifamily, but just trying to understand that condition a little bit better.
So it's, at the time of initial construction is when we really have the regulatory ability to review those plans and make sure they're compliant with the zoning condition. Now, certainly in the future, folks might turn a bedroom into an office or vice versa. It's challenging for us to get inside someone's home and regulate their behavior thereafter. But at the time of initial construction is really when we have the chance to review plans for compliance with zoning conditions.
Gotcha. Another question? Go ahead.
I know the answer to this, but what is our standard for the distance from a major intersection to a residential driveway? I'm assuming we have one.
Oh, we just had that come up on a case I handled 2 weeks ago. Yeah, 50 feet.
Okay. Could they get the first home frontage within that 50 feet such that the driveway to the closest home to High House would be at least 50 feet away?
Yes, I do believe so, because I think the lot is 190 feet or so in width on that side.
Okay. And one other unrelated question, and it may be too soon for this, but has there been a tree survey, and are there any significant trees identified?
We'll have to get back to you with that information.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions?
I have one. I just wonder if you could speak to
the information here about the utility lines and whether it's overhead or underground and the impacts of that?
So it's a sewer utility, which is typically going to be underground. You're talking about the 30-foot rear utility?
But the power lines, I
The
believe,
power
are
lines.
above ground today and likely, based on the case, they're likely, because of the size of the property, to maintain them above ground. from
So
what
they're
I
already-
It is unlikely that Duke would install them underground, correct?
But they're
given the
already
short
above
length.
ground?
They're already above ground at this location.
Correct.
Okay, so no change.
Well, I would like to say thank you for the history lesson. I'm a transplant like most people here in Cary, so that's very impressive, and the fact that you take such great pride in it, I appreciate. At this time, if someone is inclined, the motions are in front of you, and so if someone would like to make a motion for 24 REZ 05, Westley Manor rezoning, we would appreciate it.
I'll move to make a motion to find consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Andy, do you want to make any additional comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly straightforward. There was very little pushback from the neighbors, and I think the plan itself makes all the sense in the world. I know earlier you mentioned the chapters. This is consistent with. I think the live, the shape, engage, and move chapters are all consistent with this rezoning request.
Terrific. Sal, any additional comments?
Yeah, one comment. I know this site pretty well, and it's a challenging site. I don't know, who knows what would go there and when it would go there, but it seems to me that two detached dwellings, there's good use of the property.
Yep. Any additional comments or questions? Otherwise, then we would take a vote. All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. All right, on to the second case. So 24 REZ 07 Greenwood Forest Baptist Church rezoning is our second case. Katie Dry, our Assistant Planning Director, will share the staff's presentation. Following the presentation, the applicant will share their remarks. All board members will have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff and the applicant. Ms. Dry, you may proceed.
Good evening, members of the Planning and Zoning Board. I'd like to just start off by saying, bear with me. This will be a long presentation. We'll get into a lot of the details, but I'm happy to even dig into them further with questions. So this is a request to rezone approximately 7 acres located at 110 Southeast Maynard Road and 10 Kilmaine Drive. The site's located near the intersection of Kildare Farm Road. It's about a mile south of downtown Cary, and it's also in close proximity to nearby grocery stores, retail, and restaurants. It's also on a Go Cary transit line. A majority of the assemblage is located is occupied by Greenwood Forest Baptist Church and its preschool. There are no proposed greenways within or adjacent to the site. The nearest park is the Rose Street Park, about 0.2 miles to the northwest of the site. Kildare Farm Road and Southeast Maynard Road are 5-lane thoroughfares on Cary's planned roadway widths map, and minimal right-of-way is needed along these frontages. But both corridors are otherwise built to the ultimate cross sections at this location. Go Cary Route 5 runs along Kildare Farm Road with close stops in proximity. Route 5 provides service to downtown Cary and to Waverly Place and the Crescent Commons Shopping Center to the south. The current assemblage of property is split zone, with portions of the site zoned R12, office and institutional, and office and institutional conditional use. The site is also within the mixed-use overlay district. And the applicant is requesting to rezone the site to mixed-use district with a preliminary development plan. The proposed PDP, or preliminary development plan, includes 2 subdistricts. We have M1, which is designated for mixed use. It covers the existing Greenwood Forest Baptist Church site. We also have R1, which is for residential, covering a Cary-owned parcel on Kilmaine Drive. In M1, the PDP proposes to retain the existing church on the western portion of the site, including existing parking areas. The eastern portion of the site would be redeveloped with a mixed-use building up to 4 stories or 75 feet, which could include office space, a daycare, preschool, an event center on the ground floor, and multifamily dwellings on the upper floors. For comparison, the adjoining tower at the existing church is about 84 feet, and the water tower to the south on Kilmaine Drive is at 176 feet. Also, in close proximity to the site is the new Glen Eyre expansion, which is about 80 feet, just to give you some idea of nearby heights. In the R1 district, a maximum of 9 multifamily units would be constructed, in buildings with up to 3 stories or 45 feet. These units would be in smaller buildings. They would each contain their own garage, and they would have a style design. The PDP also proposes over 25,000 square feet of community gathering space in 4 locations on the site. This includes a large 10,000 square foot area near the intersection of Kildare Farm Road and Southeast Maynard Road, including seating, a garden, or plaza. 2 additional spaces are proposed central to the site and will include a playground for daycare use as well as resident and visitor use during daycare hours, along with seating. 1 additional gathering space is proposed in the R1 district with seating and a covered picnic area. The plan also proposes to retain existing vegetation along Kildare Farm Road where feasible in a 30-foot undisturbed streetscape. The southern portion of Kildare Farm Road frontage is encumbered by easements, which is why no streetscape is proposed in that area. The 30-foot typical non-residential streetscape is proposed along the Maynard frontage, which may be averaged. A 15-foot wide streetscape is proposed along the R1 subdistrict on Kilmaine Drive, as well as a 15-foot buffer along the border with a funeral home to the north, widening to about 20 feet along the M1 boundary. A reduction to the typical residential streetscape is proposed along the R1 subdistrict frontage on Maynard Road from 50 to 30 feet. 1 of 7 champion trees identified on the site is also proposed for removal. The PDP indicates minimal, if any, impacts to others within, as they are within streetscape or other undisturbed areas. The applicant is also proposing a 10-foot wide multi-use path along the frontages in lieu of a typical 5-foot sidewalk, and proposes pedestrian improvements at Kildare Farm Road intersections with both Kilmaine Drive, where pedestrian crossing signals and crosswalks will be provided, at Maynard Road, where high visible crosswalks will be striped to upgrade the existing crossings. Additional zoning conditions include a maximum of 71 dwelling units for the entirety of the site. All units will become restricted for a period of 30 years at 80% of the area median income if they are rented, or at 80% of the area median income if sold, allowing for flexibility to develop some of the units as condominiums or as part of a land trust. A minimum of 51 units will be rented at 60% of the area median income or less. 4 electric vehicle charging stations will also be provided. Several modifications are proposed to the LDO requirements, including the previously mentioned reductions to some streetscapes due to easement constraints on the Greenwood Forest site, and some challenging site geometry along the Kilmaine Drive site. 1 champion tree is proposed for removal due to potential conflicts with site access, and the site proposes to connect to existing streets via parking or other vehicular areas rather than an internal street network. And staff does note that the site currently does not include a street network as of today. Parking reductions are also requested, resulting in a cumulative reduction of approximately 61% to the LDO requirements. This number alone does not adequately cover the multiple considerations for parking, so I want to go over this modification in slightly more detail. While the cumulative parking modification results in a large parking reduction to LDO requirements, the mix of uses on the site provides an opportunity for reducing or sharing parking, such as the daycare and office. They will be parking in opposite peak hours to the religious assembly and some of the residential uses. For this reason, parking at the site at LDO requirements for every use would certainly result in overparking the site. Therefore, we evaluated the parking modifications against the parking requirements for religious assembly and residential uses, which would likely experience peak demand times on the weekends. A consultant for the applicant team prepared a parking study, which was included in your staff report as an attachment. It included industry data along with limited local data collection. The industry data is based on a small sample of nationwide sites that indicate affordable housing may have a slightly lower parking demand than Cary's LDO requirements. And currently, Cary's LDO does not distinguish between affordable or market rate units when it comes to parking. The consultants also provided parking observations on one Sunday at an affordable housing development in Raleigh, and they found that parking occupancy at that location was below the LDO requirements and provided industry data. The consultant also collected data at the existing church site on a Sunday, and they found the parking occupancy to be below the number of required spaces. They also shared information indicating that church service attendance is typically well below the capacity of the sanctuary, although it has experienced modest growth post-pandemic. The affordability of the residential units, the location on the transit line, and opportunity for shared parking with uses with weekday peak hours could possibly justify a parking demand that would be lower than LDO requirements. However, weekends could still present somewhat of a challenge with a proposed reduction when residential and church parking demands would overlap. The applicants have indicated their willingness to continue to work with staff to seek solutions such as a parking management plan. The applicant provided a condition to document a parking management plan that would be developed and submitted at the time of development plan review. At the time, the proposed parking management plan would include the following: at least three informal shared parking agreements with nearby sites. These would not be recorded, so staff would not have regulatory authority to ensure that parking is available for the long term. It would also include a pick list of supporting strategies that would be offered. At least three would need to be committed to, and these would include reserving some parking for residents during peak times, providing bicycle racks in excess of the LDO requirement, providing temporary parking attendance during times of peak demand, facilitating carpool or rideshare programs, and providing off-site shuttles for large events. Staff notes this commitment is a good start to help to ensure that limited available parking is managed with alternatives provided. However, we also note that a recorded parking shared agreement to meet the LDO requirements and/or additional informal agreements to ensure contingencies in place would more clearly address the potential parking on the site. For context, 3 sites are currently identified for informal shared parking agreements. These include the RE/MAX office to the south across Kilmaine Road, the Wake Endoscopy office across Maynard Road to the north, and Terry's Floor Fashions approximately 0.2 miles to the north. And the applicant's representative can talk a little bit more about the status of each of these agreements. So staff's analysis with this case using the Imagine Cary Community Plan finds that policies from the Live, Work, Shape, and Enrich chapters apply, as well as Cary's housing plan, which was also adopted into the Imagine Cary Community Plan with the recent update. The provision of an affordable multifamily housing choice. While housing stock in the immediate area is predominantly multifamily, commercial mixed-use centers support a provision and a mix that would be other than detached dwellings. Redevelopment of an existing site to add residential uses can also support LIV policies, which also note that an increase in development intensity on redevelopment sites can be appropriate. The provision of affordable housing supports the associated LIV policies. In addition to the LIV chapter, this proposal further goals from Cary's housing plan, providing affordable units, particularly on Cary-owned property, and providing opportunities for partnerships with affordable housing providers also supports these goals. Looking at work policies regarding smaller housing types, it is addressed by this proposal, which may help to enhance locational appeal to employers and employees through the creation of this mixed-use project at a strategic location, and may support small business through the provision for their small office and complementary daycare or preschool use. Providing the vertically integrated mixed-use project on a commercial mixed-use center addresses multiple shape policies. The site is also on a key redevelopment corridor, the Kildare Farm Road corridor, where the plan places importance on introducing a mix of uses, providing gathering space and strong pedestrian connections. The site creates a height transition from the mixed-use building at up to 75 feet in height to the smaller footprint multifamily buildings, which would be up to 45 feet, to create a transition to nearby residential uses. Buffers and streetscapes can also help to make transitions to nearby non-residential uses as well as to thoroughfares. Regarding the enriched chapter, the site makes a substantial commitment to gathering space. The provision for 4 EV charging space may help to modestly address the sustainable energy policy, and the majority of the site is developed, and the redevelopment of the church site can help to create an opportunity to preserve and supplement vegetation such as buffer areas, and by providing parking lot trees on the redeveloped portion of the site. 1 champion tree is proposed for removal, but there are 7 total in the site, and the others will be preserved. The Future Growth Framework Map designation of commercial mixed-use center promotes a mix of uses with a focus on vertical integration. Additional guidance includes framing the street with buildings, providing active public spaces, and creating interconnected vehicular and pedestrian networks. The guidance also specifies redevelopment sites should consider wider sidewalks, plazas, pocket parks, and incorporating housing on upper stories. The proposal includes vertical integration and introduces affordable residential units on an existing non-residential site. Due to the location of the existing church, the proposal does not propose framing the intersection with buildings, but has provided significant gathering space at the intersection of Kildare Farm Road and Southeast Maynard Road. Improving the existing 5-foot sidewalk to a 10-foot multi-use path along all frontages is also consistent with the vision for this area. A neighborhood meeting was held in May of 2024. There were approximately 75 citizens who participated. Questions and comments included concern about the size of the buildings, questions around development of Cary property, questions about tree canopy impacts, concerns about transitions to nearby neighborhoods, as well as traffic and parking concerns. A number of attendees voiced support for the project, particularly the affordable housing aspect. The applicants also held a smaller neighborhood meeting in July at the request of a group of area residents. The staff continues to receive feedback from some citizens with similar questions and comments to those voiced at the neighborhood meeting. A public hearing was held in December. There were 20 written comments, 1 call-in speaker, and 11 in-person speakers. Many of the comments were voiced or were in support of the project, specifically the affordable housing commitment. Some voiced concerns over the building height, transitions, environmental impacts, and traffic. Council members had a number of clarifying questions about the project, which are detailed in your staff report. They had questions about the height of nearby structures. And for context, this proposal has a maximum height of 75 feet, which is slightly shorter than the Glen Air expansion, which was at 80 feet. And then, of course, we also looked at the water tower, which is at 176 feet. Council also voiced questions and concerns regarding parking and whether it would be sufficient. Staff and the applicant have continued to discuss mitigations in the form of a parking management plan. Council also had positive comments regarding the opportunity to provide affordable housing at this location. Since the public hearing, the applicant made a number of changes to their preliminary development plan. Primarily, they clarified language and provided clearer graphics. These changes included clarifying the parameters of the affordable housing condition, including expanding the 30-year time frame to apply to all units, as well as noting the minimum number for rent at or below 60% of the area median income. They also clarified a modification to provide connections via parking or vehicular access ways rather than a street network, ensure planting rates for buffers aligned with planting provided widths, and added the future cross-access location to the adjacent funeral home. The most substantive change was the addition of a condition to provide a parking management plan at the time of development plan, which would include several informal off-site agreements as well as a number of supporting strategies. Staff's finding is that many of the policies of the Imagine Cary Community Plan apply as detailed in your staff report. A high-level summary of that is included here. We find that multiple policies of the Live chapter and the Cary Housing Plan are met as the project increases housing options in the area and provides up to 71 affordable units at 60 to 80% of the area median income. The affordable multi-family housing type can also support related work policies, and the project provides an opportunity for some small employment uses. Regarding the shape chapter, the mix of uses is supported by the commercial mixed-use center designation and the provision of a multi-use path along site frontages and access gathering space. The one champion tree that's noted, however, redevelopment of the existing site, which preceded today's LDO requirements, does provide opportunity for canopy replacements. And staff does have outstanding concerns regarding the reduction in parking. However, we do note the additional changes since the council meeting, including the parking management plan as currently proposed, could offer some mitigations. Staff notes the impact of the parking management plan could be better assured if there was a provision for at least one recorded agreement to ensure long-term alternatives were offered. And if a number of informal agreements could be increased, it would help to build contingencies should sites change ownership in the future. And staff will continue to work with the applicant team as the case continues regarding this item. So this concludes my presentation. The applicant's representative, Tom Johnson, is here to share comments. Following that, I am available for your questions.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tom Johnson with the law firm of Williams Mullen here on behalf of the applicant. Katie did a wonderful job giving you the overview of how this meets the Cary plan and all the details. But I did want to highlight some of the items and address some of the community concerns that have come up specifically to show how we've addressed those. But I want to start off by just sharing with you how this came about. Basically, Greenwood Forest recognized that they had excess space and capacity. The attendance at Greenwood Forest was below what it had been, and they did not need all the space they had for church activities. So Greenwood Forest wanted to do something to benefit the community, to serve the community. And what they came up with is a partnership with a group including the town of Cary, DHIC, the Caring Place, and the YMCA to provide affordable housing and support of those that are in affordable housing, and including transitional housing that the Caring Place will be involved with at this site. So that's how all of that came about. And why, say for instance, Katie mentioned about the parking, you've got a sanctuary where at most you may have attendance of about 100 on a given Sunday, but the capacity of the sanctuary is fire rated for 500 people. And that's not happening, and you'll see in the information that you had in the parking study that was done that used actual numbers, and it's much lower. And the amount of parking is not needed. So that's where kind of the rub comes between what the ordinance says and what's actually happening here. But I do appreciate the fact that we're all working together, coming up with ways, and I will talk specifically about some of those ways we're addressing parking. But here's some of the concerns we had. First of all, there was a concern about the height of the building. So initially, this was proposed to be 5 stories. We pulled back to 4 stories after the input from the community and what we heard. So we're limiting it to 4 stories, but keep in mind, as Katie mentioned, there's a 176-foot water tank right behind this property, right across Kilmaine. There's an 84-foot steeple that's been there at the church forever. And the Glen Air project is 6 stories and 80 feet. So it's 2 more stories than what we're proposing here. That's significant and a pretty significant reduction that we did. But on top of that, there are transitions. We transition on the one side toward Kilmaine from the 4 stories to down to 3 stories or 45 feet with respect to the town of Cary portion of the property. But on the other side with Maynard, there's a transition. There's a 100-foot wide right-of-way for Maynard Road, and the mixed-use building will be at least another 100 feet from Maynard Road. So you've got a 200-foot buffer on that side that will remain and provide that transition. But keep in mind, this is a commercial mixed-use center. It allows 4 to 6 stories is consistent with the commercial mixed-use center. The second issue that we've heard from the community is about trees. Well, as Katie mentioned, we're using an undisturbed buffer and including that. There are 6 champion trees on site that we are not disturbing. There's additional vegetation that's being added as part of this project. And the community gathering space is taking advantage of the open space that you have with the church and the setback. The church is set back from Kildare Farm Road and has a lot of green space in that area. That's that community gathering space at Kildare Farm and Maynard that's going to be in place and give that open feel, but have a gathering spot taking advantage of the existing vegetation. The third item that was mentioned that we've heard from the community is concerns about putting a median on Maynard to prevent left turns onto Wilshire. Staff report very clearly says that's not in the plans to do. It's not part of this project, nor do we propose it. So that's not a concern whatsoever. But I did want to address that in that there's no plan to do that, nor will this project require that. Something I did want to mention with this slide up, though, is there was some discussion at the public hearing about movement of traffic. Currently, there are 2 driveways from the church onto Maynard Road. One of those is being closed, so there'll only be one, and that one will be right in, right out. In reality, the way that traffic is likely to move, given that right in, right out, is for traffic to take a right-hand turn out onto Maynard Road, go to Kilmaine, take a right-hand turn, and you can see that here on the slide to Kilmaine, and come around Kilmaine to get to Kildare Farm at a traffic light that's currently there, to either go left or right on Kildare Farm, or continue down Kilmaine to Maynard and be able to turn left or right on Maynard using a traffic signal. There's no incentive or reason why coming out on that right in, right out, you would want to immediately turn onto Wilshire, because it's easier and more convenient. You have no traffic light there. You'd have to cross 2 lanes of traffic to get over there to make a left turn onto Wilshire. So the more likely way that traffic is going to function is using Kilmaine and using that block. But on top of that, we're putting that 10-foot shared path all the way around the project, which will encourage walking, biking, that type of thing, to have that community feel. The last thing is about parking. Katie's right, I was going to address that with more particularity. We currently have a written parking agreement with the Remax property across Kilmaine. That allows for 65 spaces. And the good thing is, when the spaces are needed is when church is in session. The businesses aren't operating, so there's plenty of parking there to use. So we've got that agreement in place. We are in the process of finalizing written agreements with the Endoscopy Center and Terry's Floor Fashions. And what that will end up with, that's a total of 200 additional spaces, which is more than the 100, double what we've got now, which is the 165. So that will be in place to be able to use those at non-peak times when we need to use them. So those will be in place or in the process of already being in place. The pick list that Katie mentioned of the additional items such as additional bike parking, that's an easy thing. We can provide that very easily on site. Parking attendance when we have high volume events, that's very easy to do, and certainly we would want to be able to direct people if we had an issue. In reality, the church really hasn't had an issue, maybe a funeral, maybe in a given year a funeral where you have to address that, but day in, day out on Sundays, no issue. There's plenty of parking. And those other items such as carpooling, we already have in place and have had discussions about shuttling if it ever came to that point where you would need it with other area churches that are nearby to shuttle folks. If that did happen, if there were a really big event, not unlike the big events you have in downtown Cary where you make those adjustments and handle those. But it's not a regular thing. Also, there will be assigned spaces for the affordable housing and the mixed use, so there will be assigned spaces, so that will help and address that option that was raised. So we've really addressed all of those. Again, the neighborhood was concerned about parking. Folks aren't going to park in that neighborhood if they've got the Endoscopy Center and Terry's Floor Fashion to do, where it's going to be easier to walk from that. It's not going to be easy to cross from the neighborhood and cross Maynard because there's no crosswalk there, whereas we have a crosswalk and a plan from the Endoscopy Center and Terry's Floor Fashion. And we're also improving the crosswalks and the signals at both Kilmaine and Kildare Farm and at Kildare Farm and Maynard to make it easier to cross when we put that in place. We do have a draft parking management plan that we are working on with staff and finalizing. Had a comprehensive parking study that said there's enough parking there. And as you may or may not know, the trend is away. Municipalities are moving away from parking minimums in any event because all that does is encourage a lot of asphalt that's not environmentally friendly and not needed. So this is not inconsistent with that trend to move to no parking minimums. I have my engineers and both from traffic engineers and civil engineer on the site that are available here to answer any questions you may have. I'm certainly available to answer any questions you may have. We had tremendous support at the public hearing. A room full of folks, not everybody spoke, but here in support of affordable housing. This is a tremendous opportunity to have a public-private partnership with grant funding to have an affordable housing option here in Cary at a very centralized location. There are a lot of parties that are involved. Some of those are here with me tonight, just having their support. But this is a community effort. And we appreciate the town of Cary being a part of this with us and being supportive of it. So I'm glad to answer again any questions you may have about the plan and any questions that may have been raised.
Terrific, thank you.
Certainly.
I guess before we open it up for questions, I'll just say, this obviously is sort of a visionary plan. We're trying to address a number of things, the public and private. But a lot of the things that we see as challenges and comments we get from the community are around height and density and all those things. So we want to be thoughtful in our approach, but it's visionary and it's pretty neat to see this type of an opportunity come before us, in my opinion. Does anyone have anyone get started with any questions? Address any of the specific items that they wanted to address? We can keep it consistent tonight. We'll start with Ruben down there and make our way.
I just want to echo your comment, too, about this looks like a really good thing for Cary as far as affordable housing. And I also want to applaud driveway design that gets rid of that K intersection? I just want to confirm that K intersection's disappearing. It looks like it's existing handicap parking that comes out with the same driveway, practically at the same point where Maynard is.
Well, basically, there are two driveways there now.
Right.
And there's a little semicircular way that comes in there. That's being eliminated completely, if that's what you're asking
Well,
about.
the curb cut that's farthest from Kildare, the second one, to me, is two driveways.
Right.
With one opening.
Right.
And you're getting rid of that.
We're getting rid of that.
Thank
The
you.
one that's furthest away.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
so
good.
the only access point on Maynard would be the one that's shown on your screen.
Yeah, this on the screen right now is the one that will remain. The other one will be eliminated, which is a good thing.
That's a very good thing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and the way the circulation is set up with this project included in that block with Kilmaine, again, the traffic circulation's relatively easy. While it looks challenging to have a right-in, right-out from the project onto Maynard, there's enough circulation through Kilmaine to be able to take care of that. And there still will remain an access directly to Kilmaine that will be available as well.
My only other question is, I can't tell which significant or champion tree is the removal tree.
It's a dogwood.
Is it the?
It's an understory dogwood tree that it was too close to the driveway that we're leaving.
I think it's F, is that right? You've got your trees labeled
Katie's
A
got the
through
slide.
H.
Yeah, so I'll show it in just a sec. Oops. No. Give me just a second. Just have to run through a few animations here. Here we go. Okay, so yeah, so the one champion tree that would be removed, you can see there's some just interference with site access, and so that's causing the removal.
Well, the other suggested site plan I saw showed the critical root zone barely encroaching into that pavement, and don't we have an allowable percentage of critical root zone that can be
Yes,
removed?
we
It didn't look
do,
like it was close to that.
up to 25%.
25%.
Yeah. So if
Okay.
it turns out, during the development plan review, they're able to actually save the tree, that could be something that would be considered at the time of development plan review.
Okay.
Sometimes when you're right on the edge, and if you're doing a preliminary development plan, it may be safer to go ahead and request the removal. So that way you kind of build in that by the time you get to development plan review.
The opportunity I see there as far as design goes is to change the right angle on the parking that's backed up to that driveway and put like a little L shape into it, which would bring the curb away from the tree if you had more of a curvature on the driveway. Minimal. I'll bet they can do it during,
Yeah, that's certainly
Further
something
development.
their
It's pretty-
designers could explore.
pretty close right now anyway.
Well, certainly I can say that we will make every effort we can to preserve it. If we can do that and still accomplish the consolidated driveway at that location.
Okay,
So for
thank
sure.
you.
But there are the good thing is all the
nice-
other champion trees
it's
we're
a nice
preserving.
looking lot,
And
yeah.
that's the nice thing about this site. You've got a large open space with some significant trees that you don't have to plant and wait to grow. They're there, and we're leaving them, and we're leaving large undisturbed streetscape buffers.
It's a great looking plan. I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Diane, did you want to ask any questions?
No, thank you.
No? Andy, just kind of go down the line.
Yeah, the only thing I would have a question about is, the parking, everything's pretty straightforward except for the parking component, and the request is, 61% less than the LDO requirement? So ultimately, is it the town of Cary that will kind of come together at the end with that will approve whatever agreement makes sense? Because that's just kind of like a little ambiguous now, which is understood. Not everything is going to be.
Certainly, and of course, just to clarify that 61% it would be during those weekday peak hours.
Right.
When both residential and religious assembly uses are in at the same time. As part of the applicant submitting the parking management plan condition, it would be building in a series of contingencies to help with that. And of course, as they noted, they're working on some parking agreements as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sean, anything from you?
Again, love the plan very much. I'm going to continue on the parking. With the condition that has been given, a lot of it is unrecorded requirement for agreements. What is the authority with the parking management plan as the condition is given that, you know, some of these agreements go away, they're not recorded, so what does Cary have as an authority, you know, or what is something that can be given? Yeah, yes, you know, I'm going to be asking you.
Oh, yeah, you're looking right at me. So, no, it's a great question, and what you bring up, that is the potential, that's the distinction between a recorded agreement and a not recorded one. We use the term informal, and I don't think that was exactly accurate. They're formal agreements. They're contractual agreements that are between the applicant and those owners. So they would be, it's not just a handshake. It's not like they can go away overnight. And that's something that staff would be looking at the time of development plan review. But that is when Cary has the authority to do whatever it can with this. The way the condition is worded, at the time of development plan review, they have to provide those agreements. And so we can then look at them, and at that time, that's when to determine whether or not they're valid or not to meet the terms of the condition. But if those agreements do come in and do have some, and they will have some kind of limitation, or they will terminate at some point, if they terminate, then it's done, and the town does not have any further authority under this, under the condition as written to make anything happen. So as opposed to a recorded agreement, which has a longer term, the idea would be it would be more permanent. But there are issues with that because there are valid reasons why the commercial property owners would not want to lock down their parking for long periods of time. So this is, again, it's a mitigation strategy. It's not going to be a silver bullet, but it is something that the applicant and staff are working to come to a workable middle ground.
No, thank you for the clarification on the informal being more formal than it actually sounded.
Yes, that I think when I saw that up there, I was like, yeah, it's a little more than formal. You know, it's informal only because it's not recorded. They will be contractual agreements that will be between the parties.
And that condition will go with the zoning regardless.
Yeah, correct. That's going to stay no matter what happens. If the condition as offered, they have to show up on the day development plan removal, showing that they've done these things. They have to come in, they have to say, hey, we have these agreements, and we're doing these 3 of the pick list things. And so that's how that works, as it is now.
Thank you.
Thanks. And really, our strategy at this point would be the pick list. We're likely going to do all of those because it's consistent with what our parking management plan has been all about. These written agreements are binding, and whether they're recorded or not doesn't necessarily mean they're binding or not. One, as I said, is already in writing and signed. The other 2 are in the process. We're just exchanging information, getting insurance straight between the parties and that sort of thing. The condition requires that we have at least 3 of these agreements. We have 3 right now. We're not opposed to continuing to try to negotiate because in reality, those businesses that are there, they don't need that parking on a Sunday, which is when we need it. And they really largely are not concerned about it. But if you try to tie them down too much, there are a lot of complications that can come up. Having to involve a lender potentially, you know, whoever has loaned money on that property and has a lien, those kind of things. But a simple agreement, and it is, as Matt said, a formal agreement to license or allow the use of those sites on Sundays. We've really not had any pushback, and the community has been very supportive of what we're trying to do, which is great. So those will be in place. We'll work with staff to get those final items put together. But we do appreciate the willingness of the town to continue to work with us to address that.
Thank you.
I'll just keep going this way, Mike, if you have any other questions or comments.
Yeah, is the 10-foot multi-use path that's pretty much surrounding the project, is that a requirement?
Let me double check our maps.
And the reason I ask is if it's not going to be built in front of the funeral home business that's there, would it ever be completed if it's not actually a requirement?
Yeah, so it looks like what they're proposing is above and beyond Cary's requirements, but that's also in reaction to the Cary Community Plan, saying that mixed-use center should have, above and beyond when it comes to pet and bike connection. So, so if the funeral home site were to redevelop and it were to go through zoning as an example, I think a similar discussion would happen with that. If it were to develop and not go through a rezoning, then yeah, those pedestrian accommodations could be less than.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Boshana?
Yes, I'm just curious here. For the multifamily, how many units are you thinking might be available? Just interested in the number.
Do you want to jump in on that?
We're looking at 62 units.
Okay, great.
Available.
Yeah.
And as a combination, the large majority are going to be affordable units that DHIC is putting together as the developer of those. There will be some units that will be managed by the carrying place, and those will be affordable, but they're in the nature of transitional housing, okay? From the nature of those that may be homeless or be challenged for housing would come into there, and there would be educational programs, budgeting programs, and all of that the carrying place offers to help those folks get to the point where they can then move out and have their own housing. So we've got that component. And then the YMCA is involved to work with all the residents to offer additional programs. And with the daycare center there, of course, that provides the additional support. That has been a part of Greenwood Forest for a long time, but that will remain as a support for the residents in the mixed-use affordable housing part.
No, it's great. I just wanted to have an idea of how many. That's
Right.
Great. It's a good number.
Sal?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo everybody's approval and, what you guys are doing. Affordable housing, its location is great. Working with the community organization, so really good on all that. I guess my question is to Katie or the staff. So we're addressing a potential parking issue with a parking management plan. So could we see other developments, other developers bringing that same way to address a parking problem?
Yeah, so for future sites, similar to this, I think so. This actually kind of reminds me a little bit of the South Hills project, which had a transportation demand management, so a TDM plan. So they similarly requested a parking reduction and had some reductions in their traffic analysis, and in return for that proposed a TDM program to be submitted with their plan. So I could see moving forward as we have more projects along infill and redevelopment corridors such as this one, we're going to see existing sites propose redevelopment, and it could be that they're proposing reductions to parking or working with adjoining sites.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
My only question, and it's back to the parking, but it's the uses for the multifamily standalone. It basically you have the one-to-one. Is that below the standard for the multifamily, and this overflow is the way you get there? Or could you isolate the multifamily and say these are compliant with parking standards, but it's the variability of the mixed use in the church? I don't know if I'm asking that question correctly or not, but because we do have some dedicated for the multifamily, are we envisioning that that's sufficient for those folks, or will they be frequently using these overflow options, church parking lot and otherwise, is what I'm trying to understand.
We haven't gotten into the details of how many spaces and how that dedication of spaces would occur. I would imagine that would occur when they're developing the parking management plan at the time of development plan review. So at this point, we have to look at, what the requirements would be, and of course that's based on the number of units they're proposing and then the size of their congregation area, which as you know is producing more parking spaces than the actual attendance.
Yeah.
But that's just in general how we have to calculate for parking. So I don't know if I'm actually getting to the point.
I think the answer is it's to be determined, but the point was, there is some dedicated for the multifamily, and the majority of the problem is coming from the variability of usage of the building at other times.
Yes, one of the strategies from the parking management plan was to include that dedication for
Yeah.
multifamily. Yes.
And then just for my own benefit, I'm seeing, at least the way it's laid out here, so is all of the multifamily in this sort of tail along the property, and each of those three buildings are envisioned being approximately 20 units, or is this kind of an early designation and it's to be determined?
Actually, multifamily will occur in two locations. So there will be multifamily in this mixed-use building here
Okay.
in purple. So that's where I think a lot of the units will be located.
Okay.
There will be additional multifamily along in these three buildings, like pods here. This is going to be designed so that it looks like townhouses. So the condition indicated that each unit would have a garage. So, they're going to be accessed from the ground level. So I think what you would see once this gets built is, more of a multifamily mixed-use site with ground floor, non-residential uses here on the purple area. And then these three segments here would probably look like a grouping of townhouse buildings.
So those could be your owner occupied, the 80% AMI versus the 60%?
They could be, or they could be
Theoretically.
rentals, so
Right.
but yeah. Could-
You're right.
A little early to know that for sure.
Gotcha. I think, yeah.
The parking with that mixed-use building, we looked at another affordable housing project that was very similar to come up with parking rates in the parking study. And what we were proposing here was within the range of what would work in terms of the number of parking spaces and what we needed to plan for based on the experience of that actual development.
Gotcha.
So it's not something we just pulled out of the air. We actually looked at a development, a very similar affordable housing development. Because in reality, these, it's different from market rate development in terms of needing the parking. But we'll have the set aside for that. We're working on that, but there is the intent to have that set aside for that.
And I mean, the location is on the Go Green, the Cary Go Green, all that, and theoretically, a number of these residents could be, users of public transportation.
Right.
All these other things as well. So it's not your standard metric. I understand that.
It's not.
I believe that was my only other question. Did anyone else have anything else that came to mind? If not, I guess we would entertain a motion for which one are we on here? We're on 24 REZ 07 Greenwood Forest Baptist Church. And the motions are in your package if someone's so inclined.
I move that the board find 24 REZ 07 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Second.
All right. Did you want to make any additional comments along those lines?
It's a textbook project for all the things that we're always looking for. More housing choices, increased density. It's an infill development. I can't think of kind of a better mix of uses to go here. And I think the parking study, I think, is a good example of how we can take different uses that have peaks at different times.
Yep.
And really get everyone's money out of that pavement. So really happy with it.
Sean, any additional comments?
No, the live, work, and shape sections it very much supports, and I'll echo everything Mike said without having to repeat it twice.
There you go. Diane, do you want to make any additional
No,
comments?
thanks.
Andy? No. No? Anyone? Shoshana, so? Only thing I would say is that particular intersection, the Glen Air development was the first one up, 80 feet. A lot of folks look at that and say, wow, what are we doing? But we're so close to downtown, and at the end of the day, the thing that I like about who we are as a town is we have a plan, and these areas are some areas that have been identified. And so from time to time, you have some resistance to the height in particular, I think, is one. But Big Lots, I believe, is closed across the street from you now. There's a massive property there that's likely to be redeveloped. So you guys are early on in the curve, and you can't please all the people all the time, but this is a really big step. It's transformative in what we're trying to do. And so I applaud you for the public-private partnership, because without those grants and those nonprofit organizations, fiscally, this wouldn't be possible. So that's just my kind of further endorsement to it. So all those in favor, please state aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I would say thank you. Appreciate it. All right, we're on to the third case here, and our last case. To 24 REZ 15 Wake Western Regional Center. Rezoning, Rob Wilson, our Assistant Development Services Director, will share the staff's presentation. Following the presentation, the applicant will share their remarks. All board members will have an opportunity to ask questions of staff and the applicant. Mr. Wilson, you may proceed.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Good evening.
This is a request to rezone approximately 3.6 acres located at 157 High House Road. The proposed site is in the Dorcas Plaza Shopping Center, which is located on the south side of High House Road between Old Apex Road and West Chatham Street. The 3.66 acre site is undeveloped and located between the Habitat Wake Restore and the Dorcas Plaza Shopping Center and the Buffalo Lanes Bowling Alley. Wake County purchased the property in late 2020. The subject site is part of the original 21.4 acre Cary Plaza Shopping Center for which zoning was approved in 1986. This rezoning request is only for the undeveloped 3.6 acre tract and would not alter the zoning or conditions associated with the remaining 17.8 acres of the shopping center. Cary's GIS does not indicate the presence of any stream buffers on the site. Field determination would be required at the time of development plan review. There is an existing street side trail along the north side of High House Road, shown here in blue. Additional street side trail is planned on the east side of West Chatham Street, which would connect to an existing greenway to the southeast. However, there is no project funded for this segment at this time. Along the shopping center's frontage, High House Road is a 2-lane, median-divided thoroughfare that's built out to its ultimate cross-section. To the west, at Old Apex Road, High House Road transitions to a 4-lane, median-divided cross-section as shown in pink. Old Apex Road and West Chatham Street are planned to be 3-lane thoroughfares. Go Cary Route 4 runs from NC 55 to downtown Cary using High House Road and West Chatham Street. There is a stop along the shopping center's street frontage in front of the AutoZone outparcel. The existing zoning for the site is general commercial conditional use and mixed-use overlay district. The applicant is proposing to rezone the site to office and institutional conditional use. The existing mixed-use overlay district would remain. The applicant has offered 2 zoning conditions. The first limits the use of the site to governmental office, and the second limits development on the site to a maximum of 29,000 square feet. I want to note that the LDO definition for governmental office differs from a business or professional office, as it is an office specifically occupied by a governmental agency and provides some type of direct service to the public. A preliminary analysis against the Imagine Cary Community Plan finds that policies in the Work, Shape, and Serve chapters apply most directly to the proposal. The Work chapter notes that growing a sustainable and diverse workforce is important. The proposed rezoning for a governmental office could provide additional job opportunities. The Work chapter also discusses the need to support the locational needs of new and expanding firms. The rezoning could provide an opportunity to allow new or relocated governmental offices at this location. Regarding the Shape chapter, the proposal appears to support the policy of encouraging mixed-use development by proposing a new standalone office use that is not currently present in this commercial center. The Shape chapter also encourages infill development, and this rezoning proposes to develop a remaining vacant parcel in the Dorcas Plaza development. In addition, the Shape chapter discusses providing appropriate transitions between land uses. This site is adjacent to a residential neighborhood to the southeast, and the shift from commercial to office therefore appears to potentially provide a slightly less intense use transition. The Serve chapter discusses providing services and facilities for current and future generations. This rezoning could introduce a new governmental facility that would provide services to area citizens. The Future Growth Framework map designates the subject site with the Commercial Center Development category. Commercial centers are areas defined by a shopping center of 5 to 10 acres or more, anchored by a supermarket or other large tenant. Commercial centers may also have complementary residential, office, and institutional uses. The proposed rezoning could be supported by this development category as it incorporates an office use in a commercial center that is currently developed primarily with a shopping center and commercial uses. The community plan also notes that development in commercial centers should enhance walkability and incorporate street trees, street furniture, and civic spaces, such as outdoor plazas or pocket parks. While the existing shopping center includes street trees along its high house frontage and additional trees internal to the site, there are no existing civic spaces or pocket parks, nor are any proposed as part of this rezoning. The LDO required community gathering space would apply. A neighborhood meeting was held in January and 7 citizens attended. Questions and concerns focused on whether the adjacent tenants would remain and how shared parking would work on the site. After the neighborhood meeting, staff received one phone call with questions and concerns about the buffer adjacent to the residential lots that are located southeast of the site. The council held a public hearing on February the 6th. There were comments from one citizen who was concerned about traffic and the increased number of people coming to this proposed governmental facility. Council comments included concern about the potential impact on the High House West Chatham intersection and how shared parking would work. While we have received follow-up emails from the citizen who spoke at the public hearing about traffic and the increased number of people coming to this facility, there have been no changes to the proposal since the hearing. Staff's preliminary finding is that the proposal meets policies in 3 sections of the Imagine Cary Community Plan. Regarding the work chapter, the proposal helps to diversify the workforce opportunities on this site while also supporting the locational needs of an expanding governmental use. As far as the shape chapter, the proposal would encourage mixed use on this site by adding an office use while developing an infill site. Regarding the serve chapter, the proposal would provide services and facilities to citizens. This concludes my presentation. Rachel Watson, the applicant's representative, is here to provide comments. Following the applicant's presentation, I'll be available for any questions.
Terrific. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Watson with CLH Design. We are the applicant on behalf of Wake County. Rob did a really great job of presenting our proposal. I just want to reiterate a few things on how our proposal relates to the community plan and how rezoning to OIC will, the project site will have a similar use to adjacent developments, use similar uses and functions as well. It responds to our growing population's needs. It provides jobs and services to the community, and also aligns with the zoning of nearby residential areas and commercial centers as well. I'm here for questions, and then also Wake County is also here for questions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Did anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yeah.
The corner of High House Road and West Chatham, there's not a signaled light there, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And is a traffic study required here?
It is not required. This is just below the threshold for requiring a traffic study.
Okay, okay. And then you said something about gathering space. I didn't quite get that. So there is no gathering space.
There is no zoning commitment.
There's no zoning commitment.
Yes, the normal LDO community gathering space requirements would apply at the time of development plan. So they would have to meet the minimum
They
requirements.
would have to meet it.
Yes, but they would just have to meet the minimum requirements in the LDO.
Okay, okay. That's all I got.
Anything else? Bashana?
Yes, so what is the residential buffer to the residences that are along that southern, eastern little corner? Just curious.
So yeah, we've got that mentioned, I believe, in the staff report. Find it here. There we go. So based on the current land uses, a 40-foot type B buffer would be required to the south against the mini storage, and a 30-foot type B buffer would be required to the southeast, which is the RMF district.
And so, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like, what is the real intent of really changing the zoning for the government building? If it sounds like it might still be, you might be able to do the same thing in the current zoning? Like, what is the thing that's going to make it, or is it not possible in the current zoning to do a government building?
It's not possible.
It's not possible, okay, so I just want to, sorry, I wanted to clarify
That's right.
that.
The standalone office needs
Oh.
of the office and
Okay.
institutional
There's no- yeah,
that's
okay.
being requested.
Okay, that was it, thank you.
Anything, Mike?
No questions.
Sean?
Again, with the traffic, turning left, from that area on High House going towards Old Apex, that's just, it's a hard left turn, and then you're going to increase a lot of traffic going in there. And I know it's under the threshold, but that's still going to be really concerning, for the town. And there's no conditions being offered. And this has the potential to bring even more traffic than just the governmental office built, to it. And so I'm just not, I'm not convinced that all of the town's equities are being addressed in the current proposal.
Can I have a follow-up question? There's another entrance near the Complete Auto Care. Obviously, it's part of the adjacent property. Are there cross-access agreements between these? Could folks using this property exit on the entrance further down?
Let me make sure I understand your question, and
Yeah.
let me pull up the vicinity map.
But I don't know about legally.
So are you referring to?
Yes.
The
Yes.
second point of ingress and egress? Right, so as a shopping center, there is an approved plan that delivers the connectivity that you see today. Any change would require that plan would have to be revised. I can't speak as to what sort of internal access agreements might be in place. Are you aware of any cross-access agreements that are in place between the two property owners?
More to that. So in conjunction with the owner, Wake County, we are working with a shared parking agreement with Dorcas Plaza. Dorcas is a community partner that we've been working with since the beginning of this project. They're aware of the shared parking requirement, and they're in favor of it. So we're working on that currently. That will be more developed as we move through the development plan process as well.
Gotcha. Andy, did you have any additional questions?
I don't, no.
Diane?
I do. When you say office, is this where someone would come in at 8 and leave at 5, or is this public coming to get services at these buildings?
Well, to be clear, there are no zoning commitments as it relates to hours of operation. So the applicant can certainly respond, but just to understand, there's no commitment for the information that will be shared.
Yeah, I was just questioning the kind of the use, and we were talking about traffic and parking and those things.
Yes, there's a public component as well as a office component associated with this building and the rezoning as well. So that will be part of the development plan process. It is a regional center, so it will have similar uses to other regional centers in the area. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my question was kind of about you're introducing a new use in between these other uses, and so that was my question, is what kind of traffic does that draw and what kind of parking requirements? And
We don't have any analysis that we've received from the applicant. Do you have any information to share on traffic?
We will work with staff if a traffic analysis is needed for this project. I know for the shared parking study, some analysis is needed for the parking and traffic in the area. So we'll work with staff to continue that conversation.
So just to be clear, the LDO does have very specific requirements that have to be followed with shared parking proposals as part of the development plan. We do not have any requirements that would require additional traffic analysis once the zoning is in place.
Any you good? Did you get your answer?
I think you were asking about hours. Did you get enough information? Do you know if it's the county's intent for this to be 8 to 5?
I have Wake County here to answer that question about program.
Good evening. My name is John DeHara. I'm with the Wake County Facilities Design Construction. So the hours of Regional Center are from 8 to 5. Just to answer your concern about what kind of uses are in that building. So the first floor is going to be public access, and the top floor is staff that serves those clients. The question about traffic, I just want to share with you, the reason we're locating the regional center here is because our clients are already on site. Dorcas Ministries is our partner, and we saw this as an opportunity to create more of a campus where we can leverage the services of each entity and serve those clients that are already coming to the site. For Dorcas Ministries, currently our regional center per se is at, I think it's James Jackson, but it's not sized appropriately to provide all the services, and thus the reason we've located it here.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, it seems like a very compatible connection with the zoning, and it seems like a good transition as well with the other zones. It was just a question of how those pieces fit together. Thanks.
I guess my only question, it sounds like the answer is yes. So there is a specific building and a plan already in place versus, because there was some ambiguity about what it meant to be government office, but at this point, it's been purchased with a specific plan, and you're not going to end up with like a school bus yard, or, just trying to get to kind of what the overall property will look like once completed.
Let me share the definition for governmental office from the
Okay.
Land Development Ordinance. It's a building occupied by a governmental agency that provides direct services to the public, such as employment, public assistance, motor vehicle licensing and registration, and similar activities.
Okay.
So bus maintenance facility, which I think you mentioned something like that would
Yeah.
not fit within-
Exactly. That's what I was really just trying to get at, is the specific, but there's a plan in place, and that makes sense. And, I think that was really my only question personally. Anyone else have anything else? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm kind of getting the sense here that nothing's been offered up for things that we would normally ask developers to offer up as it relates to zoning conditions. Is that?
Each zoning is different.
Okay.
So it's,
yeah.
certainly if there are areas that you have concerns about, it would be appropriate to make sure the client's clear on what those are.
Gathering space, traffic, that doesn't feel like to me that, any conditions have been
Right.
offered up.
Okay.
And then, is it, the size of 29,000 square feet does not sort of dictate the number of people that will be coming in and out, right? I mean, there's no way of doing that, right? It sounds to me like it could be very busy, building with a lot of people coming and going. And we've got, concerns about left turns and
Yeah.
no parking lights. So I don't know, it's some comments.
So based on the proposed square footage, the IT trip generation rates indicate that it would add 90, during the AM peak, it'd be 97 peak hour trips. 100 is the threshold requiring a study. So it's just below the threshold, which is why a study wasn't required and hasn't been provided. From there, that's the information that we have to share.
But the requirements would not take into consideration the use of a government service center or building? Is that right? Is it just, it's a 29,000 square foot building?
Mm-hmm.
The trips are this number.
Right. There's a specific IT trip generation rate that we used for this use. There's a matching code for the use, and that's the rate we used, which generated the 97 number that was just below the 100 threshold. Mm-hmm. So now, it's a model. It's based on certain assumptions. Every traffic study is based on assumptions, but it's we rely on the IT trip generation rates to do those calculations.
This is just a follow-up to that. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just wanted to provide clarification.
Pritham Kanda, Senior Transportation Engineer.
Thank you. So the trip generation is specifically for a government office building?
It is.
It is based on the IT trip generation manual.
Okay.
It does not, unfortunately, go into what kind of government office building. So the data only goes as far as it being a government office building.
Right.
Just a follow-up along those lines. Let's say, we're just under the threshold, it's not done. Is there some process in the future, in my neighborhood, they added a light where I didn't have a light? Like, if down the road additional development happens, like is there another opportunity to look at, let's improve because we've had more, whatever, we've had changes in traffic patterns? Is there some process in the future where the town looks at that independent of the developer? I'm just trying to understand how or when that might change as additional development happens.
I'll give you my answer, and then if Pritham has additional information, he can help. We're constantly monitoring all of the roads in Cary's jurisdiction. We're constantly monitoring on an annual basis the level of service at our signalized intersections. So, I guess the answer is if there is significant additional impact that impacts intersections, then we would identify it as part of those annual efforts, and then we would look to budget and try to address it in time.
Yep.
So the town would pick up that.
The town or the next person who develops, if another property sells and someone else redevelops it and has additional zoning, then there could be other opportunities. But if it's just organic growth or we've missed the study or something, the town has a regulator where they're monitoring that, and it could be something that the town could proactively address.
I'm not sure whether proactive is quite the right word.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
That we're constantly monitoring as we look to maintain Cary.
Gotcha.
Yes, it would be picked up as part of our annual observations, and then we would look to address it appropriately with budgets.
If it was deemed to be a problem, you'd try to figure out how to fix it. Gotcha. Any other questions or comments?
So just a quick one, again, on that same
Yeah.
topic. So did you then account like the Dorcas thrift shop traffic plus, because you're all coming in for one entrance mostly, right? Plus the 29,000 square foot building. So now you're aggregating the 97 trips?
So the requirement for a traffic study is simply based on the additional trips generated by the proposed use.
Even though you're sharing now a road with like this other facility that's right next door?
It's independent of
It's
the
independent.
other uses
Okay.
that are on site.
Okay.
So
Just
what
wanted
you're
to
reading
make
is
sure it
that this use on the 3.6 acres, if the entire 29,000 square feet were built, based on the applicable IT trip generation rate, it would generate an additional 97 AM peak hour trips. The PM number is less. I believe it's about 54, 55. That would be in addition to the other traffic that currently exists there today.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add a comment to say I'm not particularly concerned about traffic and parking here. This was originally zoned as general commercial, and we're taking a piece of that and changing the zoning so that government can build commercial and use it. So I don't have any concerns there.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree there. And also, it's a pretty big area. So I just did the math, 3.6 acres, I think, is like 160,000 square feet. You guys are building 29. So, I don't know how much additional permeate, whatever, the solid surface that'll be there and all that, but there's a lot of property beyond what we've got with just the development, I think. Does anyone inclined to make a motion for 24 REZ 15 Wake Western Regional Center rezoning?
I'll motion to find consistent with the comprehensive plan. Move that the board find 24 REZ 15 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all the applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by Planning and Zoning Board. I'm extremely familiar with this site. My parents had a restaurant in Cary Plaza 30 years ago, and I played in those woods. And I've since been to that shopping center a number of times. It is a grossly underutilized area of Cary, and I'm looking forward to seeing something done there.
Anyone want a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Diane, second. I'll give everyone a chance, though. Mike made some comments. Do you have any additional comments, Diane?
No, thank you.
Okay. Andy, do you want to make any additional
No
comments?
additional
before-
comments, no, thank you.
Okay, Sean?
Again, I do think the traffic, coming up by that auto zone, not concerned with the parking, but the additional demand is worth taking a harder look at.
Any other comments? Then, I would take a vote at this point then. Would all those in favor please state aye? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
So we've got 2 nays and whatever it is, 5 ayes? All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I do believe we're at the end of the agenda now, if I'm not mistaken. So is there any additional old business that before the committee? If not, then I appreciate tonight's meeting and everyone participating, and the meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.